It says 2:18.
Open the meeting. Voting.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
A moment of silence for our first responders. Thank you. All right, I think we know that the Zoom public is asked to remain muted. We'll have questions on motions. First of all, comment and questions from the board, then from participants in the room, and then from Zoom. If you're on Zoom and you have a comment or question, please raise your little hand on the Zoom profile. I should announce that we had an executive session tonight dealing with a personnel and labor matter. Public hearings, we have no public hearings scheduled tonight, so we'll take the emergency services reports. The chief's not here?
No,
That's a surprise. I'm very surprised. She's usually,
I
In
did check
attendance?
with her and she said that she was coming tonight.
all right,
So-
well, if she comes in, we'll take her report. Maybe she had something of an urgent nature. I see that Grant is here. Grant?
Hello, Grant.
How's everyone tonight?
Good.
Good,
How are you?
thank
I'm good, thank you. So for the month of January, Goshen Fire Company responded to 51 fire calls, 36 fire police calls, and 449 EMS calls. We had 17 fire calls in East Goshen, 6 fire police responses, and 203 EMS responses in the township. The ambulance treated 365 patients. 287 of those patients were 65 and older. We had 220 calls to assisted living or retirement facilities. The fire crews responded to 22 automatic fire alarms, which is about 43% of our calls. And that's actually a little below average. The major incidents for the month, we had the accident at Reservoir Road and Strasburg Road where the vehicle went into the creek. The occupant was safely recovered from the vehicle, and the fire crew provided hazardous material booms just to make sure that there wasn't any oil or anything coming out of the car till it was recovered.
Good.
We had an accident with fire in West Goshen Township at Westchester Pike and Five Points Road. We had our first electric vehicle fire on Route 202 near Boot Road in West Goshen Township. We were in service for that call for about 2 hours as we cooled the batteries down. And then once the fire was extinguished, we had the vehicle towed to the Westchester Fire Training School so it could sit out in the open and not
Grant,
catch fire again.
on something like that, do you fight that kind of fire with water or do you have a chemical?
No, it's water and it's just cooling. You have to get the battery temperatures down below a certain point.
I see.
It's a skill that every fire department's starting to learn because everybody's.
Yeah, I
running
have a
into it.
question about that since I have an EV. What kind of an EV was it?
BMW i3.
Oh, okay.
And then we just had an assist to Edgemont Fire Company for small building fire at White Horse Village. It was fairly minor, but in terms of fundraising, we just had our second mailing on our subscription drive. Seems to be doing very well this year. And our business contribution drive is going out as well. And we're looking forward to the flower sales on Easter and Mother's Day.
Do we put anything in our newsletter about that?
I believe so. So Phil Salas, who's one of our board members, is also our social media coordinator. And he's on the distribution list for the East Goshen newsletter, West
Good.
Goshen, and so forth. So
Good.
Are you going to be able to get more flowers than you did in the past year or two? Because
that
I know
is-
you've been selling out.
we intend to go to our pre-COVID inventory levels.
Okay, good. Well, that's
Uh,
great because that means that the sales are up enough to do
Yeah,
that.
we hope so. And it, obviously, we try to turn out a lot of people, and when the inventory is short, it's kind of disappointing to go home early. So
Mhm,
we'd like to be busy through midday on Sunday,
mhm.
and sell as much as we can.
Good.
Very great.
Thanks.
Thanks, Grant.
Have a good night.
We don't have the fire marshal.
Uh,
And again, what's the deal in this, Derek?
Carmen, I did not talk to before this meeting, so I know he's still recovering from knee issues, but he said long-term that he's still plans on coming to the meetings.
Okay, well, I wish him well. Do we have a new fire marshal?
Yes, Dwayne Brady, who's the zoning officer, but it was worked out where Carmen as deputy fire marshal will still come to the meetings and give the reports.
And give the
long-term.
reports. Thank you.
Yep, but in the meantime, I will take it today. And the next one would be Malvern Fire Company, Mr. Chairman. For the month of January, Malvern Fire Company responded to a total of 183 calls. 44 of those were in East Goshen, so that was 24% of their total call volume. And moving on to Good Fellowship. Good Fellowship for the month of January had a total of 670 calls. 56 of those were in East Goshen, and that accounted for 8.4% of Good Fellowship's total call volume. And the year to date is obviously 56 as well, 1 month into the year. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you.
Chief just gave me-
Oh. We'll take a pause. You're up if you're ready, chief. Doesn't surprise me. Thank you.
How are you tonight?
Okay, how about yourself?
Good, thanks.
All righty. Start with the statistical report for the people that are interested in that. The total calls for service during the month of January for all three townships was 1,706. When you compare that to January for previous years, it is 58.55% higher than any other year, including our pre-pandemic year of 2019. With regard to East Goshen Township, there were 929 calls for service. The next closest year for having a January calls for service was unfortunately 2019, and there was 603. So we went from 603 to 929. I'm sorry, I have a little bit of a cold coming on. No, I'm okay. I'm sorry. I just have a little bit of a cold coming on. I'm losing my voice.
Chief,
Um,
can I interrupt you and ask
yes, sir.
about those calls, the 929 calls in East Goshen? I read your executive summary, by the way, thank you. There were not 929 serious incidents or anything. like that.
No,
What
no,
is
no,
the
no.
nature of those 929?
One thing I would recommend, if you really want to dig into it deeply, we have a monthly activity report that's part of our police commission packet, and it will go into great deal for each township. So you can see, generally, East Goshen has a very high number of ambulance calls. So for East Goshen, you will find that a disproportionate amount involves ambulances.
Okay, and you have to come out.
Yeah, one of the things that we found is that simply because our officers are out and about, sometimes they can get to a call faster. And particularly if it's something that's life-threatening, we try to get there as quickly as possible because our officers have done CPR, they've helped choking babies, et cetera. So
Okay.
the only thing that we do not respond to is a medical call in a facility that has medical personnel.
I understand. Okay, well, that clears it up for me then.
Yeah.
It's not so much crimes as it is a service and assistance. Then.
Yes, and the one thing that I do like to point out to people, and we discussed it at the police commission, is there is a very fine line between proactive and reactive, and those calls for service include proactive work. I'd like to think that one of the reasons that we make the arrests that we do and we prevent crime is through our proactive work. But that is included in that. So, I mean, again, I don't want to, the statistics are not designed to alarm people. They're not designed just to inform them. So, I mean, like when I get into the actual trends in East Goshen, the one really good news I have for January is there were no significant trends in East Goshen.
Good.
That's good news. The amount of thefts dropped significantly. We had one rental car theft. We had a theft from a car at the YMCA, a theft of a catalytic converter, and we had two vehicles that I believe were originally stolen out of West Goshen, and we helped to recover the vehicles in our area, and we helped to make the arrest for those two juveniles. So that's good news. Just a quick synopsis of what actually occurred in East Goshen in January. 5 thefts, 1 missing adult was located, 5 frauds, which is excellent. That's a very low number for East Goshen, especially because of our senior citizens. 1 sexual assault investigation, 2 drug-related investigations, 1 that involved charges, 4 vandalism investigations, 1 simple assault investigation, 2 weapons investigations, 2 trespassing investigations, and 1 counterfeiting investigation where we had a business experience that check washing that we were talking about. And that is also a significant drop for East Goshen over previous months. So it was active in East Goshen, but nothing alarming.
Good.
Question, Chief, do you think that's due to the nature of people writing checks around Christmas time and more checks being sent out, or do you think it's just a positive sign?
Yeah, I'd like to say it's a positive sign in that this trend has kind of seen its time, but I think that's being overly optimistic.
Chief, I wanted to ask you about mail fraud.
Mhm.
And I know that we were very concerned about that in the fall.
Right.
And is there any update on that you can give us?
That was the check washing that I was referring to. We are continuing to work with a task force that is multi-state and involves federal agencies too. We have made some arrests. If you've been following our crime watch, you will see that we got lucky and we were able to use various investigative techniques to identify people and charge them. The devil's in the details. However, many of these individuals do not live in Pennsylvania or don't live in an area where it's easy to apprehend them. But we are continuing to work with other agencies to try to bring these people to justice so that the victims get some sense of justice.
And as far as mail fraud is concerned, do we have is it safer to use the post offices all the time now? Or are we still being just being very careful and using the blue gel ink?
We continue to recommend blue gel ink and not mailing checks. I know that that's a major inconvenience for many people, but we have found that we don't know exactly where the problem is, but taking it into the inside of a post office does not necessarily guarantee that you won't be victimized. And in fact, in Westtown Township, we had their post office was burglarized, and we ultimately found out that that was one of the things that they were stealing. We thought they were focused primarily on packages there and also ransacking the employees' desks. But ultimately what we found is that some checks were stolen and washed.
Is that still a federal crime?
Yes, it is. That's why the U.S. Postal Inspectors are playing a primary role in the investigation.
Okay, good.
Any other questions? Okay, thank you.
Thanks,
you.
Chief. Feel better. See you tomorrow.
See you tomorrow.
All right, that brings up number 7, the financial report. Dave, what do you have to say for yourself?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. As of January 31st, net of pass-throughs, the general fund had year-to-date revenue of $410,499, expenses of $959,976 for a deficit of $549,976. As of January 31st, the general fund balance was $5,193,137. January revenue was 2.4% lower than budget, 12.5% lower than prior year. Real estate transfer tax collections is driving the decrease versus budget, while real estate transfer tax and earned income tax collections are driving the decrease versus prior year. January expenses are 5.8% over budget and 24% higher than prior year. Year to date, the timing of engineering services and recharges coupled with building expenses drove the expenses higher than a budget. Net result from actual operations in January is $53,000 lower than budget. Insurance premiums, administrative costs, engineering costs, the timing of snow renewal purchases, and vehicle maintenance repair are driving the actual expense versus prior year.
Dave, would you clarify for me, the second paragraph under expenses with 5.8% over budget and 24% higher than the prior year to date, but the net result of actual operations in January is $53,000 lower than budget. It seems contradictory. We're over budget on the expenses by percentages that you share, but then you give a dollar number and you say we're lower in actual operations. Maybe I haven't been doing enough finance in the last couple of years.
You're talking versus prior year or budget?
Well, I'm just looking at the one sentence here that says the net result from actual operations in January is 53,000 lower than budget.
Right,
And we're
so
talking about the expense side only there?
no, that's the total net result. So
Oh,
So-
there you go. Okay, thanks.
Dave, I have two questions. I apologize, I forgot to ask them earlier. My first, the enabling taxes or the transfer tax being under budget by 23,000. Do you think that's going to be a trend?
it seems to be temporarily at least temporarily because of the increased rates that we're seeing for mortgages. All interest rates are up. Usually it's kind of equaling out the housing boom that we saw last year. The forecasts that I've seen show that it's probably short term, probably coming back later this year, at least back to normal. But I mean, we had a fairly aggressive, but not too overly aggressive, kind of an average 800,000 for the year forecasted. I still think we could get there. If we're short, it's probably $50,000 loss.
Well, if we do that, it looks like my next point would be then for the interest earnings. Do you think that could be a trend of 5,500? There's our makeup of our 50 to 60,000 that we could lose on the.
Assuming we have the balances, yeah, it should offset it.
Thanks. That's all my two questions.
Do you think the earned income tax is just a timing issue? We're not seeing any trends with reduced?
No, we got last year an unusual January payment, which we typically don't see that much. So we're not sure yet if that's just a timing thing. February looks pretty strong so far. So fingers crossed, keep a close eye on that one.
Thank you.
Any other questions? All right, we're at the approval of minutes and treasurer's report.
No minutes.
No minutes, treasurer's report.
Let's see, from the week of February 2nd, 2023 to February 16th, 2023. We had EIT, RE transfer and LST tax collections, franchise fees and permit fees driving the general fund revenue. Additionally, we had park and rec camp registrations that sold out in less than 15 minutes and generated over $100,000 in revenue. The $389,000 WeGo February contribution, $86,000 in insurance premium payments, $16,000 in audit fees, and $6,500 in geothermal controls inspection. That's a planned maintenance inspection for the geothermal controls. Per the contract, were paid out of the general fund. Other expenses include routine maintenance and repair, along with engineering costs, utilities, and legal costs. Our capital fund incurred $125,500 in expense for the budgeted replacement skid steer, which is now included on our fixed asset list as a replacement. The bond fund expenditures included $458,000 payment to West Goshen Sewer Authority, which represents our final payment for the West Town Way Pump Station.
Hooray.
ARPA fund expenditures include $6,000 in expenses for Hershey Mill Estates sewer repair project.
What's the ARPA fund look like?
The ARPA fund right now, we have,
962, 487.
yep,
And are we committed to spend that on anything? Is that in the budget?
that's supposed to
on
pay
Hershey's
off
Mill.
the remainder of the sewer estate project. Hershey Mill Sewer Estates.
Yeah.
Hershey Mill Estates sewer project.
Yeah.
Yes.
It's just, don't call
Yes.
David's place. sewer. I
I
got it.
got
though.
sewer on the brain.
That's it. And this, is that, will that cover the Hershey's Mill sewer repairs, the state's?
Based
repairs?
on what we've got as the low bid, it really is how much extra we pay out for the additional stone inspections and engineering and things, but it should be pretty close.
Oh, good. Good to hear.
Yeah.
Just
We have been using a lot more stone, but that's dollars well spent because it, some of it was sinking depending on the locations, but they, the contractor is very vigilant about that, to really bed it down as securely as possible. If they can't get the bedrock, they're really kind of pushing it in there. So,
Yeah,
I don't know how much the stone's gonna end up costing more, but it's gonna be.
worth it.
$1,000.
Yeah, and they're not coming back for change orders. They're driving ahead to get this project done.
Yeah,
And talking to Pannoni with Municipal Authority, they are, the cost estimate so that they would be profitable is kind of doing about 100
feet
feet
a day.
a day, and they are closer to 200 feet. a
Yeah.
day.
Really?
Yeah.
They're quite the operation.
That's good news.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I did want to make a quick note on the franchise fees, Mr. Chairman, because we did start that process last year to re-up the franchise agreement
Comcast.
with Comcast, with the Cohen Group, and I emailed them today to get an update because I haven't heard from them since before the holidays. So I'll keep an eye on that and make sure we get that. I'd rather get that done sooner rather than later. So I
I
will
got
update
you.
you accordingly.
Okay. thank you.
Mr. Chair, I'll move that
Oh.
we accept the receipts and approve the expenditures as presented in the expenditure register and as summarized in the treasurer's report.
I'll second it.
Thank you. Any more comment from the board?
Yeah, I have some questions, so does Cody.
I have
Oh,
one,
okay.
I have one question. Sorry, I forgot to answer earlier.
Take
Dave.
your time.
The page 2, this may be for Derek, the COG meeting, do we get reimbursed for that?
Nope.
No,
So why are we the ones paying for it?
it was Rick, so Rick had been the secretary and the treasurer for the COG forever. And it was just always sort of eaten by East Goshen Township.
And so is that a one-time expense or is that a recurring?
Is this for the ad? I don't know.
I'm sorry, no, it's just page 2 for 157.99.
157.99. Yeah, so that is one time for actually, it would have been recurring, but we actually decided to do all the meetings once a year.
Okay.
Now, I will say, if there's any re-advertising that needs to be done, then that would be an expense, which actually there does now that I think about it, because West Goshen already changed the May date.
So what I think I'm gonna do then is the representative to COG, next time we're in a meeting, I'm gonna bring it up and say, I know it's only $158, but it's not fair for us to have to continue to pay for it and that we should just get reimbursed from the, we have like $10,000 in there, so.
Yeah.
And COG, so-
Cody. I-
Welcome to that comment.
Excellent.
so-
Do you have anything else?
No, sorry. I already
Were you gonna
answered.
ask about Portnoy?
Huh? Oh, no, I forgot. What's my Portnoy update? Now that you mentioned it.
Well, when it's good news, I like to say it. 40% overall collection rate from East Goshen and Portnoy combined. So we've collected total 71,000 out of 100 and we've got 108,000 still remaining. And we've collected 71,000.
Great, that's terrific.
What-
Yeah. no,
Sorry, just finish up really quick. Sorry, Michelle.
no worries.
Is there any way that they could provide some type of update? I mean, this is just me being, really interested in this, like for the last final stages, like a stage breakdown of, okay,
Yeah.
these are people on their last call. We're gonna have to do something more aggressive than just a letter type of.
Yeah, we reached out to them to get more definitive reporting on the brackets because we're passing on people that are over 6 months due. And a lot of them we're collecting as soon as they get that letter
Got it.
originally. Chris has also put together on their final bills and notices to say, hey, you are going to be passed to a collections place.
Got it.
just for your information. That seems to get people to call and also sign up for the automatic withdrawals. So that's proactive, but then we are working with them to get some more clarity on if they've got better reporting to give us a quick glance without us having to go back through all of the detail that we've got to say out of the total buckets, 90-day or 180 days to 240 to 360 and over.
Great, thank you. Sorry, go ahead.
Yep.
Just one point on that. It'd be good to know, Dave, when you inquire with Portnoy, what number of the accounts they have that they have active payment plans with the customer. So that way we know that there's presuming they follow the payment plan, there's an active, if you will, guaranteed stream for that reimbursement of those fees.
Good.
We
idea.
have some sense.
Okay, so Dave, I have a few questions for you. So on page 1 here, we have a late fee for the Lowe's business account.
Yes.
And then a couple pages later on 5, we have a credit for double payment to the Lowe's account. So what happened with that?
That was, we were,
Is it the same account?
Is it the same account? Was
it's
it?
the same account. It's Mark's. We got a credit back on it, but didn't realize that we had a credit, but we were late paying the one time. I think we had a long break between approvals.
okay.
and That one fell through Barb's net and mine as well.
Okay,
We did, our new employee is instituting newer processes. We're looking at all the recurring bills.
Great.
And we are actively engaging the vendors for the ones that are 30 days. We'll get a 2% discount. And I mean,
Nice.
it's, the latest one that we got was $70, but it's $70.
that's great.
And then we've also got in the works to get active ACHs or credit card payments with these that are ongoing and regular. So it's either going to give us cash back or it's going to take it out of our worries about late fees.
Great. And then page 1, so I wanted to ask about Candlestick Communications.
Yes,
Can you tell me how much we pay Candlestick per year, or is it only as needed?
it's only as needed. This actually gets us a discount of about 50% on any work that's done by giving them a retainer, which makes it more like a normal cost. This is a unique system.
Yes,
And when we are finished with this in 2 to 3 years, we will move to a larger, possibly more expensive originally, but we'll be able to change it ourselves and things like that. So all the new employees that we got put on, we have to bring them back in to give. Everything is independently done by each person's phone. So it has to be reprogrammed, rewritten out little tabs to say, this is all the people that's on their quick dial, because everybody has a personalized quick dial.
okay, great. And then I'm looking at page 4, the legal services. So was this charged to Applebrook? This $1,200 from Landmark Lane, is that gonna be reimbursed?
That's an inquiry that we're having with Bill Chrisman.
Great. And then I'm almost done. And I'm sorry I didn't call you earlier. So looking at page 6, the bounce houses, is that an expense that is going to be reimbursed by Friends of East Goshen Township? Or is that something that is on the township?
It typically will be reimbursed by
Okay.
them once we have community day. We usually pay half deposit up front. It's usually
Okay.
about 5,000. They were the cheapest ones.
Great. And then further down is treat trees at 1560 Tanglewood. So why are we treating trees and why was it $1,000 to treat a tree? Or 2, or how many? And what was it treated for?
It was a single tree. And it's an old tree.
Okay,
That's the big one. Yeah,
okay.
Oh, well, going over the roots and stuff to give it a booster.
Okay.
Yeah, I remember Mark.
I just wondered-
talking about
I
it.
he had
wonder about
concerns about it dying, so we brought out an expert to
It
make
was a
sure that
bit
it,
prophylactic, if you will.
Yeah, that's fine. I just wanted to make sure.
Yep.
And then I think this is my last question, actually, on page 9. Applebrook spray irrigation pump for $7,961. So is this something that we're paying? Is it something they're paying?
this
Is
is
it something
something,
for their irrigation system?
this is something we're buying and we're gonna charge back to them as part of the. since we've done with the spray irrigation loan payment, we talked with the MA and we talked with Bill Chrisman, and there is technically an agreement in place that Mark dug out of God knows where,
Oh, really? Great.
that
We have a meeting about it
That-
tomorrow.
that says that we are entitled to any improvements directly affecting Applebrook. And that pump is specifically for the dispensal from the main that goes out there.
Okay.
So we will be recharging them.
Okay, so we're gonna be recharging that, and I'd like to also ask you, it's not a bill, but I'd like to ask about the situation with Applebrook regarding the irrigation that they have not previously paid for.
The
That we have
services for,
provided them?
by Public Works?
Yes.
Yes, that
So
is
is that
being
something that-
rectified. We are
That's part of the discussion tomorrow.
checks in
part
the
of-
mail.
oh, good.
apparently.
Okay, great. That's fantastic. Thank you. That's all I had.
Questions from the floor? I don't see any hands up on Zoom. So I assume we're finished discussion. I'll call a question. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. 5-0.
Thank you, Dave.
Thank you.
Hi,
Thank you,
just in case
Dave.
it wasn't heard.
Old business, none, new business,
Mr. Chairman, I would like to make a motion to please table the discussion of the RFQ for the WEGO staffing and policing model study.
I'll second that.
Thank you.
discussion.
That'll be on an upcoming agenda.
Upcoming
next
agenda. Yeah,
March 7th.
March 7th.
there we go.
Good. All right, save that one.
All right, questions from the floor? Anybody on Zoom? Hand is up on Zoom.
You go ahead, Russ.
Hi, Russ.
Are you muted, Russ?
Anybody? Unmute if you got something to say, Russ. No.
I was just, I'm trying to follow what you guys were saying about that RFQ with the police.
Oh, I just made a motion to table the discussion that we were going to have till another time. We're also trying to coordinate the discussion with our partners. The West Town Board has to have the discussion as well. So we're just trying to postpone that until we need to have that discussion, just for another meeting.
Then that'll be the appropriate time to ask questions on that topic.
That is
Yes.
correct.
Okay,
Yeah, we expect to have it on the docket.
March 7th.
March 7th, Russ.
all right, thank you.
Thank
No
you.
problem. Thank you.
All right, hearing no more questions or comments, I'll call a question. All in favor?
Aye.
Good. 10B, discussion on costs and funding sources of the Milltown Dam project.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I will sort of set the stage here for this conversation. As you know, we have Milltown Dam on as a recurring issue on the agenda every month, just to give an update, every meeting, just to give an update. You know, it seems we're always having conversations on the financing here during during those meetings. I'm also always having one-off conversations with the financial picture of this project with Dave or one of you. So right now, as I explained in the memo, we're sort of in a holding pattern, waiting for this $500,000 grant and whether National Park Service is going to extend it or not. So I just thought it would be a good opportunity, given the lighter agenda tonight versus our March meetings, to have what is really a open-ended, take it anywhere you want discussion and talk all over the finances of the Milltown Dam Rehabilitation Project. Dave did attach a good spreadsheet here to kind of give you an idea of what's going on. There's a lot of different sources of funding. So there's no motion on the table. This is for discussion purposes. We also have obviously a huge master plan component of this project versus also the breaching of the dam and the stream restoration, which is the essential portion from the DEP and Army Corps part of the project. So, but there's a lot to this. We've been talking about it, you know, for months and months and even years and years beyond me. So I will just leave it to you guys to take over from here.
If I might, Mr. Chair.
I think we ought to have Dave just briefly run over the main numbers before we start a discussion among ourselves. Dave, can you do that for us? And before I even ask for that, do we have this, Derek? Do we have this document that we could put it up on
Yep.
the?
I can share it right now.
Screen.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Yes, Mr. Chair. So I went back through every invoice that we've gotten dating back to 2016-17 for Gannett Fleming. That's when we started with what you see at the top, red belly turtle relocation, Milltown Dam enhancements, the partial breach and hazard reduction, the Clomer FEMA review and the Clomer. Those weren't in original budgeted items when they did the original budget that I could tell. It looks like engineering in general wasn't included in the cost, and then we got the new bid documents and estimates from Gannett Fleming last May. So basically, we are estimating about $3.9 million in construction. This is all based on the master plan design, and $900,000 in total engineering. Now, we have already spent $550,000 on engineering and construction, 7,000 of that being construction. So we still have about $4.3 million left, including contingency of 15% to complete this project as is. Now, we have $1.4 million left in our original budget allocation. We have 915.
Original bond allocation.
Original bond allocation, correct. We have $915,000 of grants that have been awarded. And if we assume we all get extended and we get paid out, that's $915,000. Looking to see what the Hershey Mill Dam finishes out at. It looks like we could reallocate $430,000 from the bond that was allocated there that we won't need to spend. That gets us within reach, and then we're anticipating Hershey's Mill Dam, a capital reserve grant, or not grant, but yeah, a grant to pay out once that's complete of $380,000. And we've already eaten the capital reserve costs. So that would just be a windfall. On top of that, we wouldn't need to put back in the cap reserve based on the balances we're looking at today. And then I'm estimating that we could put 500,000 in from the infrastructure sustainability and $27,000 from the operating reserve fund to make up the difference. So
Okay.
pretty much it's 1.5 million that we're covering. And it looks like about 1.1 million of that needs to come from existing funds that we have not allocated.
Well, yeah, you're tapping into the capital reserve fund, the infrastructure sustainability fund, and the operating reserve fund. And that totals up to about $1.5 million.
Correct.
Against that, if we get the $250,000 grant that we're applying for,
That would reduce it by 250,000.
okay, so we're talking $1.25 million out of our reserve funds.
Potentially. Potentially.
What do you mean potentially?
Well, we don't know we're gonna get the 250 yet. We don't even know we're gonna get the 500 yet
Right.
from
Well,
DCNR through the
Yes.
National Park
Correct.
Service.
that's the next question. When will we know that? First of all, the grants that we want to renew, when will we have an answer on that?
Well, the only one in question right now is the DCNR / National Park Service. As I said in the letter, I sent out to residents in that area. To be blunt, I don't have a good answer, because we now made the inquiry through our Congresswoman, who I did get confirmation they reached out to the National Park Service, but all federal bureaucracies can take up to 30 days to respond. Now they did say the National Park Service is a little bit better than some in their experience, but that's the best timeline they gave me. Now, I'm hoping that, I'm hoping that, cooler heads will prevail, because the last I heard from DCNR, they did say that the National Park Service, I guess finally sort of admitting that this is a nationwide issue with delays from COVID, has stopped talking about this in specific project and is trying to come up with a quote, they said a nationwide issue solution. So I feel like that's a little bit positive because that's the first time DCNR has heard from National Park Service, according to them, in months. So at least they got a response, but I don't have a great timeline on it. And in the meantime, obviously, we can't go out to bid until we have the grant situation.
That current grant expires in June of this year, correct?
Correct, June 30th, 2023. Oh, hold on, I'm sorry. No, actually, no, I'm sorry. National Park Service grant technically expires at the end of this month.
And just to make sure that I understand, the Infrastructure Sustainability Fund currently has $1.8 million in it.
Correct.
And we're talking about a potential shortfall at this point of approximately $1.1 million. And 500 of that would come from the Infrastructure Sustainability Fund. I would like to see all of that 1.1 coming from Infrastructure Sustainability Fund. Because at this point, we have plenty of monies in there. So that would be my preference but I have to say, while I'm supportive of this project, I still think that we need to consider that residents may have turned over since 2016 and that master plan was created. And things came to light last summer. We made some changes over in that Milltown Dam area at the request of residents because of the smell, the mosquitoes and whatnot. People pulling into that 1.5 parking spot that is there and doing unfortunate things in that spot. My concern is we're going to be putting 8 parking spots right there. And are the residents really going to be amenable to that now? We're going to be putting another parking lot of 15 parking spots down the road. These people bought their properties
We
because.
may or may not be doing that.
Right. My point,
Please.
that's exactly my point is that these residents may have changed their mind as to the scope of this project. And rather than be worried about funding it as it is, I think that we need to get a little bit more resident input to see if they're really truly behind this master plan or if some things have to be reconsidered.
Other comment?
Yeah, I was just reading a report done by Robert Charles Lesser and Company for home buyers. And they asked new home buyers, what are they looking for in a community? And the answers are in this order. Number 1, parks and green spaces. Number 2, paved trail systems for walking, jogging, and biking. Number 3, Main Street village centers with retail services and cafes for gathering and socializing. Number 4, outdoor resort style pools. Number 5, exercise rooms and equipment. Number 6, natural unpaved trail systems for hiking and walking. If we're going to remain competitive as a community, the traditional 4-bedroom, 2-story home, 2-car garage on 3/4 of an acre is not going to be competitive for new home buyers unless we look at the amenities that home buyers are looking for. And we've had a number of conversations at these meetings about people talking about the board threatening people's home values by providing certain services. And here is a company that advises real estate people on what amenities communities should have. And I think that that's a 19.2 acre piece of property. That's not a pocket park. That is parks and green spaces, number 1 on the list. And I think we need to support it.
I'm supportive of it, David. I'm reluctant to move much further without getting resident input because I think that the scope of the project might change with new residents that have moved in, and I'm concerned about that.
Yeah,
but-
frankly, we're not building it for those residents. We're building it for East Goshen Township. And also I'll point you to the Futures Committee surveys that reiterate and confirm what I just said. that's what our community wants. They want that as well.
Well,
So-
that's also for communities that are not built up. We're already a built up community. So I think that some of that is not applicable to our particular situation, but I don't disagree that this needs to be done. I just don't know that this is the scope that we should be looking at. That's all.
I'm supportive of this project. Everyone knows that. I like the way that the plan is portrayed. Now I'm happy to have resident input on that. They need to park in my driveway on Park Ave. I'm happy to have them do that as well, or the church across the street that is empty during the week. I'm sure the fire hall would be amenable to 4 parking spots if that becomes a major issue. I do have a question about infrastructure sustainability. So we have 1.8 in there. Don't we have ponds budget? Like, what's the overall breakdown of what we have budgeted in there from there?
The most recent project is slated for this year, which is about $500,000 for Bow Tree Pond 1. The remainder of that fund is for all of the other township ponds and waterways to be revitalized.
But there's no other project that money's earmarked for out of there.
Just in general.
Just in general.
proposed
Okay, all right. I
projects,
didn't, I
yeah,
was curious.
And those projects can also be paid for using other funds.
with the general fund typically, yes.
So they don't have to be paid for with the infrastructure sustainability fund alone, is my point.
No, and the operating reserve fund, as we discussed, so the general fund supports the capital reserve fund, which also, and it also supports the operating reserve fund. And currently it's supported the infrastructure sustainability fund, but we do not have a mechanism in place to fund that fund ongoing on an annual basis.
If I might, I suppose I stimulated this conversation for tonight because in anticipation of the response from the grantor, in particular, our obligations when accepting this grant or these grants in regard to the master plan, which was submitted as part of the grant applications. And they've based their grant awards on that master plan. And looking ahead this year, at least my goal at least before I get out of here is to have some sort of consensus among the board on this funding equation, accomplish the bids this year so that it's in place and ready to go in full fashion come 2024. There's been discussion over the months prior about fund balances. I think the professional staff, particularly the director of finances, provide the very cogent explanations of fund balances, their relationship to financial management in the municipal government. And the manner of our accumulated funds is well within the bounds of responsible financial management. That said, we know we've had a tax increase. We don't know how this year is going to end up, whether we have a surplus or not. That may bring some pundits of the tax increase out. But again, this tax increase is looking forward relative to the 10-year forecast. That said, this Milltown Dam project is one of the, at least that I can see in the horizon, last new improvement, major infrastructure projects in the township over the course of at least the next 10 years that I can see. There was a public participation process in the master plan, active participation, very transparent. It was adopted. I think it's important to have continuity amongst boards, changing administrations, when there's been a public process that is agreed that this is a worthwhile project. I think there is agreement that the project is worthwhile. It's how we get to the details of what it's going to look like. That said, if we build these grants in, presuming we get the extension on the $500,000 grant so that that's remains relevant in this equation. We have the funds unless the bids come out way over a $4.3 million price tag to complete this project without upsetting our fund balances and our financial stability. We will have the funds available to honor the grants within the scope of what was presented and the grants were awarded upon. And we will have the opportunity to complete this project in probably an 18-month period and turn that location into a destination park for the southern, particularly the southern location of the township. It also has a component of MS4 credits associated with stormwater management and the requirements of the DEP. That takes a good portion of the baseline of the dollars with the dam and restoration of the wetland. And I feel very confident that with this funding scenario, we can accomplish this on a lot of levels and end up creating something there that was represented to occur and will have a long future benefiting our residents. There are issues that are of concern related to parking places and unintended consequences. I think as a park like this, relatively speaking, it will be a passive park. It will have no real bearing to what East Goshen Park is as a community standards type park. This will be more passive, but as that develops or as it's installed and completed and develops with the participation from residents in the immediate neighborhoods and the vesting in the ownership of it and the care of it and the use of it, some of these situations that occur sometimes in now what is a somewhat secluded location will, I believe, dissipate, and it will end up being a project that is worthy of East Goshen Township, its current residents in the future. So I am fully supportive of this funding equation at this time, and hopefully the bids are acceptable when they come in, and hopefully we can get that part of the equation completed so we know where we stand before the fourth quarter is too far gone this year.
Thanks, Mike. I just had one extra comment. I want to thank Mark and his guys. They've cleared out about, I don't know, 120 trees down there. They're down there every time they have extra projects. I always like to walk down with the dog and sort of see what's going on. But you can actually somewhat see what the remains of the water that are there now when you drive by. So that's sort of nice to see some progress. I know some of my neighbors are happy to see that. At least there's something going on. You know, granted, it's not what we all want right now, but at least there's progress. So thanks to Mark and his guys. They're doing a great job.
Yep, great.
Okay, I want to weigh into a couple questions. What are these annual inspections that apparently cost us over $3,000 a year? Who inspects what?
Gannett Fleming inspects the partial breach dam for our insurance policies for liability.
Yeah.
Okay. And if first of all, how new are these numbers? When were they last done?
You mean the budget estimate?
All of these numbers.
All of
actually.
the old things have already come to pass, and those are budgets that I dug out of old invoices from our scanned software or in our physical files down in the basement. Everything in Gannett Fleming's engineering and construction forward is from either that period, which they've held to, and we are under contract for that they're not to exceed, or Gannett Fleming's construction, which was done last year.
The construction part was done last year.
Yeah, in
Yeah,
May,
it's
and,
lit.
and there's $500,000 in there as a 15% contingency,
Mhm.
so that if it's not 3.4, we're assuming 3.9. So we.
Okay.
But it was
we
in the
have a
later
decent
half,
cushion.
it was in the later half of last year.
For
Yeah, it was closer to October.
people to follow, 3.9 million is the construction cost, and the Gannett Fleming cost is, you said 900,000, right?
Yeah, and Dave said it was October, so we say last year, but it was really a few months ago.
Okay.
Or-
The other thing I want to be clear on is the site improvements. Is that the park itself? Site improvements, $976,000. Is that the park?
It actually includes more than just park amenities and features. It's one of the reasons why we really would need to go back out to them to break apart all the bid pieces to see what is included.
They're doing that.
Planting and reseeding is separate. It's 221,000. And paving is separate. It's 296,000.
But-
I would appreciate for our next discussion that we break some of that out. So
That's a good point, John.
We
The
know, thank you.
976 includes, I mean, you have the cost document. You want to put it up
No, the cost document for,
for Milltown for the 3.9. It's broken out. Do you want me to email it?
is it in the packet?
well,
No.
Yeah.
you don't have to try. You don't have to try to answer it now. I'd like that for next time.
Well, I mean, we have it all right now. It's part of what we had to put together for, that's the bulk of what we put in that qualifies for the $250,000 grant.
The grant.
But $200,000 for the pedestrian bridges, 340,000 is for stream channel improvements, which is buffers, boulder trees, walls, matting, a pond inlet and outer weirs. There is, a lot of this without them saying, I mean, stormwater management is 35,000. So I'm not sure how much of it is required and would be done anyway versus, and still qualifies for the grant versus what is something that's not necessary.
Well, they're working on looking at the bid documents in order to break that down, because I think we're looking at this a little differently, because where it says the construction and it breaks that down, some of that's intermingled. Some of that's all, some of it has to do with the master plan, some of it has to do with the breach and stream restoration. So they're working on getting a better, true version of just what we have to do for DEP and Army Corps purposes versus the master plan park portion.
Okay. Well,
So
that's,
that,
yeah,
that's,
what I'd
that,
like to
I
see.
know that's what you're kind of looking for, but that's,
that-
right now, that doesn't, it exists, but we have to kind of
I'm
break
just
it down a little
curious to
easier.
See it.
Now, I will say that I was on the phone with Gannett Fleming last week, and by their estimation, out of that 3.9 million, they estimate that 1 million of that would be for breaching and stream bank restoration and the work that is necessary that we have to do per DEP permanent Army Corps. So 1 million out of the 3.9, 2.9 million, it would be the master plan portion of it. That's rough estimates right now, but that's the best they can give me.
Okay.
One of the things that, John, that's a good question. Of course, Derek has explained that we will get that breakout of, what is required by each of these entities and as it comes down to what are the amenities that are included in these grant awards that are tied to the grant award and which ones are not, so that we have a bit more discretion there, which we talked about previously. So hopefully we'll be able to see that front and center. One option that could occur as we finalize any funding equation for this in these months ahead is the possibility of a decision once we see that breakout of saying, we're not going to take the grant. We want to manage our finances and our budget more effectively. If we feel that certain amenities aren't necessary immediately and they can be put in at a later time by the township, we forego the grant award, but at the same time, we're foregoing that we may be reducing the cost of the project in the immediate scope of it that we would be completing. So there is there is a potential opportunity cost there that plays of letting go of a grant in favor of managing the cost at the current time to try and get this project well underway towards completion before the end of 2024. So that's another potential. And I think as you just requested, and as again, reiterate that Derek's working on, and Dave, we get this breakout so we can say, aha, so this is what the grant requires us to put in. This is what DEP requires us to do. These are some discretionary items we now have as a township, as a board to say, do we want to do these? Do we not want to do them? And that may, that separates some of possibly the shape from the wheat. And then that may play into a discussion about, do we want to accept the grant with these kind of parameters that we have to do X, Y, Z? So there's more discussion, but I wanted to get this stimulated and keep it active on the agenda. I don't really care what the status is of the Milltown Dam site at the moment. I just want to see the status of our responses from these agencies, this breakout, and then our continued active discussion.
One thing too, Derek, if you're able to, sorry to add this. I know that Mark and his guys can get a lot of the paving done, and not to add to their workload, between the paving and the pedestrian bridges. I mean, they just built a bridge over here. I think it would be helpful too, to sort of have Mark's input on it as well, see what they could do to help trim some costs.
Yeah, for-
Realistic input, because Mark
Yeah.
will say, hey, you can do anything.
That's-
I agree,
that's
yes.
true.
Realistic. And
Good point.
Michelle, I think you're
Yeah.
right with me
You
there.
were right.
And some of that has to do with construction sequencing too, because some of the things they might be able to do might not be able to happen initially. So
Right.
that's another part of it.
We know they can build bridges. We know they can build extended decks and ramps over wetlands. We know they can do a lot of things, but they do have a lot of other things to do too.
Too.
I just emailed everybody the construction cost estimate that includes, that
That's
is referenced
breakout. Oh,
here,
great.
and it has all the
Thanks.
breakouts
Okay.
of all the details.
Thank you.
I just wanted to ask, Derek, do you have like a time frame for so after we get the information that we want?
Mm.
And what did you tell the residents as far as what the timeline is looking like for anything? Did you-
I didn't give a
You-
solid
you couldn't-
timeline.
you
I kept it
couldn't,
very
right?
open because I don't want to disappoint. I tried to do a timeline last year and
It
it
was
has
disappointing.
gone horribly.
Yeah.
So I kind of want to be honest with them and say, listen,
Okay.
National Park Service is kind of holding us up right
Okay.
now. But if we are fortunate enough to get the grant, then at that point, because DCNR is not reviewing our bid documents as promised until the National Park Service gives the go-ahead that it's actually going to take place. Which kind of makes sense, because why would they?
Does,
if-
of course,
you know,
but still.
it's still annoying.
So essentially, we're gonna have to come up with the decision by the end of this month on what we do moving forward, if we wait for if we go again for the 500,000, or we'll just have to
Yeah,
make a decision
now,
hopefully. by
without that grant, we could move quickly. I mean, we can have the bid documents out pretty quick. So I don't want to give a date, but
Yeah.
we can move fast at that point if we don't have anything holding us up.
Okay.
So.
Thank you.
Would you
Bill.
like me to read the Milltown Dam letter that Derek sent out?
No.
I have it right here.
Bill is going to ask a
I
question.
can read.
I want to ask. Do you want to ask a question? We discussed this. But it's something that's not in
No,
here.
there's no motion. There's no motion.
Bill Geyer, 1560 Tanglewood. So yeah, I think this is the topic you might be referring to, John. I mean, this is something I raised 2 years ago, which is, I think it's still a gap in this process. I always hear discussions about one-time cost, but I never hear about what is it going to maintain, cost to maintain on a regular ongoing basis. So I think Derek and Dave, where I sent kind of a sample of using this Milltown Dam Park as a topic, kind of an outline to say here, thinking about the things that the park staff are going to need to do. So, if we do everything that's in that grant proposal, the pavilion, the benches, the trails, the paved trails, the unpaved trails, the fishing piers, the 20 parking spaces, have we done an assessment of just a rough estimate of what we think it's going to cost, in terms of direct costs and indirect costs for staff?
That's, David, this is what I wanted to bring up, but I didn't want to steal Bill's thunder. So I asked him to ask the question, but I would like to see a breakout of what maintenance and upkeep will cost us for a park of this size.
I mean, it is a passive park, so primarily it's, from my point of view, it would be them doing the bathrooms like they do at the East Goshen Township Park.
Mowing the grass,
Why don't we do this?
repainting.
Parts of it, but I
Why
don't
we
know
ask
what's
Mark
gonna be
Miller?
mowed.
Why
mowed or
ask
not.
Mark Miller to give his assessment on this with some, some rough numbers or time associated with the task.
Are we
task
gonna
and-
clear the snow off the pass? I mean, that,
It has to-
this
has to
is an
be net
ongoing
of
cost
anything
for
we
us.
have to do already. at that location.
Well, that's right.
Well-
So we clear and mow now.
Yeah.
And we're gonna clear and mow maybe less then because we'll have more.
Well, once the water is gone, it'd just be a stream. There'd be more
well,
property there.
Let's ask Mark to do it. I'm just saying it needs to be net of, open space isn't free and improved open space isn't free, but it has to be net of what we already have to do.
May I quote David Shuey?
May.
Open space pays no taxes.
That's exactly right.
That's right.
That's a famous quote from
Open
Mr.
space is
Shuey.
not free.
It's not free at all.
I can tell you that from my experience in East.
And I would also ask maybe when he does that to maybe break it out with a little bit like, snow removal, are you going to shovel some of the pass?
See what Mark can put together to
Thank you,
give
Bill.
some sense of it.
One
And
other,
there's
one
a-
other
a
question.
capital
It's gonna take a
component to
lot of
this as well.
assumptions, just so everybody.
There's,
knows.
there's a capital component in some way or shape or number that's going to be associated with some of these improvements that we're going to have to put capital funds away for,
Right.
even if they're long-term, like repaving the parking lot or a dam, who knows? But there are some capital components even on a somewhat passive park that this is going to be. So if we can get some sense on that, the pencil can't be perfectly sharp at this point in time, but get some dimension. Mr. Geyer's got a good point.
Sure.
And that's a question we always try and ask anyway, about what are the future maintenance costs? It was asked about the Paoli Pike Trail, and that was, I think, reasonably well answered. So you guys can do that as well. So let's.
Thanks,
move
Mike.
forward.
That was my next question, which is the kind of the replacement cycle,
Yeah.
with the,
Yeah.
with the,
Yeah, so that's good.
Well,
You
just
know
for
what you're
rule of
asking?
thumb too,
thanks.
we pay about
Thank you, Bill.
25% currently in overtime to Public Works. So technically we're already paying like we have 15 FTEs when really we have 12.
So that brings up a
Let's see
whole
what you're
nother
saying.
conversation about staff.
So I'm
and full-time
correct.
versus Overtime. Let's not bring that up tonight,
All right,
but.
but it
Just
is.
saying
a
apples
cost.
to apples.
Oh, yeah. I'm with you.
It is a cost.
That's a good number to hear, 12 versus 15. All right,
I'm good for tonight. You guys,
I'm good.
over here?
I'm good.
Okay, comment, any other comment?
No
No
motion.
motion. Well, I.
You
say I
guys have
asked
a
for
couple
comment.
of
We do
things to
have
do and
A hand
we'll wait
raised.
to hear
I
from
don't
you.
know if you want to do it during public comment or not. It's Russ.
Okay.
You want me to wait till public comment?
Yeah, that's a good idea.
Okay,
All right,
no problem.
Yeah, good.
all right.
Thank you.
That was a good discussion. That leaves us with Article C, consideration of resolution 2023-07 regarding clean energy future from the ESAC. Who do we have for this? Christie, are you up for this?
Christie is, yeah, I don't have much to add. It's resolution, Mr. Chairman, 2023-07 on the table from the ESAC about clean energy future. So
Okay,
I will let Christie or whoever, if they have any comments, if you'd like to do anything, that.
yeah. Christie, it's not necessary for you to read it. Just summarize it if you would, please. I think we've all read it.
I wasn't going to read it, plus I sent you some comments in addition. All I was going to do right now, if it would be helpful, good evening, by the way, is mention a few reasons why this resolution will hopefully not only cost the township additional funds, but help us save money. So I thought that might, based on the conversation I just heard on the last issue, that might be useful. The comments I'm going to make, forgive me, I'm going to read because they're contributions from literally everyone on our committee. So I've just compiled some comments here. First of all, East Goshen Township is doing everything right. we're moving towards, at least moving in the right direction towards an EV/hybrid fleet, solar panels where possible. These expenses are already contemplated and will pay for themselves over time. Our main job, based on this proposed resolution, will be to convince residents to buy electric heat pumps, geothermal setups, solar roof panels, and EV vehicles. And this is, of course, the same for landlords and business owners. We need to encourage and assist with this, primarily from the standpoint of education. And that's part of the regular budget you've already approved for our council. So, and this is the particular focus of the upcoming expo that we are hosting on April 15th. It's focused on renewable energy for the individuals, for our individual residents. Any new township regulations that encourage green energy transitions won't cost the township anything except possibly legal fees to review them. And while I have no desire to reduce the billable hours of our esteemed Esquire, I promise to offer precise wording for any ordinance changes that will hopefully not add much of any consequence to the legal expenses for our township. But setting the example with native plantings, talking about Mark's labor force and his hard work. Native plants are drought tolerant, require little or no mowing. With the elimination of pesticides and fertilizers, the reduction of composting needs, this will all save us not only cost, but manpower hours by Mark's staff. And that will set the model for residents. The introduction of strategically placed rain and bog gardens save undesirable runoffs and the clogging of our storm drains, which cost us money. Looking forward to the budget over the next 10 or 20 years for East Goshen, reducing climate disruption will save substantial costs associated with potential emergency responses to those disruptions. That includes flooding, snow and storm emergencies, heat waves causing brownouts, etc. Careful environmental planning now will reduce healthcare costs, building repairs, renovation expenses, infrastructure reinforcement, and all related emergency costs. And the obvious point is responding after the fact is a poor alternative to intelligent advanced planning. Gradual replacement of our vehicles with EVs is always a smart plan. The cost of gas is currently 3 times the cost of electric pricing to run a typical EV today. There are no costs incurred for oil changes, transmission fluid, lubrication, etc. And suddenly, to our delight, the cost of purchasing new EVs, the average EV, is suddenly now becoming equivalent to the cost of a gas vehicle. So helping our residents transition away from single-use plastic bags, straws, styrofoam will keep these items, which take hundreds of years to disintegrate in landfills, from clogging our drains. This will reduce roadside cleanup and even animal rescue when they become trapped. This is all part of our education program, and we will help save money to the township. This won't cost anything for our educational work. Now, I just want to mention quickly then, the Cadmus study that you all approved recommends that we pass solar-ready guidelines, EV-ready ordinances, develop a building electrification roadmap, initiate renewable energy campaigns, and engage our community in setting energy goals. The only one of these that may involve a modest outlay of funds is possibly the electrification roadmap, and we will do our best to secure both qualified volunteers and funding for this. So I hope that's answered some questions in advance, but Jim Wiley was going to be here, but he was helping his daughter with some plumbing and overextended himself. But Brian is here if there's any questions we could answer for you.
I'm going to make a couple of comments, and I don't mean to offend anybody, but I do what I can do personally and affordably to impact hopefully positively impact the environment. One of the most positively impactful things that can be done are solar panels. There's a question when they run out of their lifetime in about 40 years, what happens to the panels? That is a questionable thing. I drive an EV and I cannot support EV on our fleets right now. I absolutely can support hybrids. EVs are run on lithium batteries. Lithium is mined in some rather unethical ways on the backs of many people who die in that process. We also don't know what's going to happen with those lithium batteries as they start to pile up. The reason that we have an EV is because we do have solar to offset. At this point, we're not causing any more of a drain on the fossil fuel grid because we have the solar panels to offset that. Not everybody has that infrastructure in their home or the business or their municipality. And until we have solar panels on the roof of that depot, it cannot even be a discussion that we have here. It just can't, because we'd have to run too many electrical wires to be able to charge our fleet. It's just not attainable. It's just not attainable. You know, I know that I've talked about this with you all before, and I don't understand why this is still a push. Those EV charging stations up at Hershey's Mill are still not being utilized. I don't use it because I already have a charge, so I don't need it. And most of the people who are going to need it, at least they know where it's located. But I can't even, as far as the Cadmus report is concerned, we didn't approve it. We merely accepted the findings. There was a report that was done. It was on renewable resources. We didn't approve it as something that we would do. We just simply said, well, we paid for it. We've accepted the findings. We can take that as recommendations, simply just recommendations. We did not participate in the PPA because the purchase power agreement put us in a situation where we're going to tie the hands of future boards by locking them into a higher rate of electricity just to get cleaner electricity. But we were going to have to help them build the infrastructure for that company. And when they came back to us, it said very implicitly in that contract that they could come back to us and ask us or require us to contribute to the infrastructure improvements at any point during that contract. So at year 14 of that contract, we could be paying for a whole brand new facility for clean energy to be produced and then walk away without being able to possibly even renew because the cost will be too expensive. It's just some of these things are just simply not attainable. And we don't have the money in this township at this point to achieve any of these things. So I can't say that we can accept these things. We're not moving to EVs, and I don't know why we think that we're moving to EVs.
That's really meant for individual residents.
Yeah, but the township is not doing that.
I understand.
And so so my personal opinion is we can't support these. I can't approve these things. It puts our township in a financially very difficult position. And I really felt that the ESAC would be better spent their time finding somebody who can lease the top of the depot so that we could have a solar panel array on that really nice, huge expanse of roof. It's a perfect place. We would be able to if we could lease that piece of real estate and get a reduced rate for our electricity, that would be a much smarter way of preserving the environment.
My understanding on that point is that the board explored that. David mentioned the board had explored that several years ago and that it was put on hold. We would be more than happy to, to resume that conversation. But I understand completely what you're saying about the East Goshen fleet, but really the thrust here is for the whole township, and it's the main need is to encourage individuals. I'm in the process of now buying one for myself. So
How are you going to charge it?
well, I would have something put in my garage. What we need
But
to do.
you're going to charge it then with Pico Energy, aren't you?
Fossil fuels.
Fossil fuels.
It's
if
still
you-
better than my gas engine.
You say. Well, I don't understand it. We should have a motion on the board before we,
John, I just have a question here, Christie.
Sure.
let's get a motion in before we have comment.
Yeah, I'll make a
Shouldn't have
motion
comment.
that we approve resolution number 2023-07. Supporting the 100% renewable energy future.
Thank you, David. Does anybody have a second? Motion doesn't carry.
Chrissy, I do have a couple questions if you don't mind, just out of curiosity here. Because obviously we want to continue to move forward towards a renewable energy where we can. The dates, so on the resolution number 1, I just had a couple questions about, by 2035 and 2050, anytime I see years, I get a little nervous to see if it's actually administratively possible for us to
I
be able to
understand.
attain that.
These are standard figures that there is a nationwide, actually a worldwide, but there's a very strong nationwide ready for 100 organization. And so these are numbers that, and they're numbers that are being used by the state and now by Chester County.
So my
we
question.
didn't, we didn't invent those.
Got it. Okay.
Yeah.
So for the numbers though, is that based off of, so the study is for 100% renewable energy. So does that mean it's a 12-year process and that's where we got 2035? Is that the number, how you get to 2035, or is 2035 just a universal? Or is it, okay, 100%?
These are the two figures that all the townships that have approved some version of this have all
Okay.
used. And then they come up with their own formula as to how to achieve that.
Got
But
it.
the main thrust for us is where the township is able to set an example. That's great. The real thrust is the township only has a small number of cars, but how many hundreds and thousands of cars are on the road
Sure. And I would be more like,
driven by East Goshen residents?
sure, and the intentions of this are good. So I think, obviously would be engaging residents through educational campaigns, supportive of that. Defining the clean renewable energy on board. Obviously number 3, prioritizing local produced energy. Maybe I'm just misreading the way the resolution is read, but it's more of a less of the township is responsible for then transitioning, but more of an encouragement to inform and educate residents. And where we can set an example where we can, I'd be probably a little bit more.
Yes, we're the only one that has, of all of our 6 townships within the COG group, that has a geothermal
Geothermal,
unit.
yeah.
Yeah, so, obviously what we're talking about and what we'll be focusing on with the expo is to try and encourage. I just had, a new heat pump installed for my geothermal. We want to encourage as
Got it,
many
okay.
residents possible
That's
to
great.
move in that direction.
Got it.
That won't happen in 1 year.
Sure.
People have to plan because it's not cheap,
Yeah.
but it's ultimately
Better for the
cost saving.
future. Yeah, got it. Okay.
I'll just make a comment that, what we're trying to do is the ESAC can provide us with advice on any one of the issues on this resolution. The resolution is an attempt to codify some of the effort and participate in the Ready 100 with our fellow townships. But, if you look at the wording of the obligations that the resolution gives us, it's engaging with, to encourage, calling on to support, making definitions, prioritizing. There's no obligation in any of those for the township to do anything. It's just codifying our support for renewable energy future. And I'll also comment that we're already doing a lot of this stuff. We changed our ordinances to make it easier for solar installations on roofs. We did that 2 years ago. So we're already moving toward all this. It's just an attempt to codify it. It made no, it doesn't obligate us to spend any money, or it's more education, prioritizing, encouragement, and that's the spirit of this resolution.
There's no mandate.
I'd like
There-
to offer a couple of comments if I might. And with what David has just said, and his take or his interpretation of this resolution, I can concur largely with that. And perhaps as colleagues, a couple changes in a couple of these, and a few of these items might help, and I'll give you an example, a couple examples that I wrote down. Under one, under the therefore, under 1A, instead of implementing energy efficiency, continue investigating the implementing of energy efficient renewable initiatives. Continue investigating. Under number 4, instead of transition the township's pension plan investments, investigate transitioning the township pension plan. In other words, consistent with what David has just said, encouraging us to keep our examinations open without committiness, either financially or from a policy standpoint, through this resolution, but to continue to pursue these things through engagement with our fellow municipal partners in the COG, and investigating it internally here with the staff as technology comes up and items come up, whether it's related to the code or opportunities for our fleet, changes in the technology. So the content here is less demanding and more looking forward by keeping ourselves open and aware and engaging. So with a couple of those little changes, I can support this. I'll tell you the one thing I do support though, which isn't here, and I know I don't have support on it, a majority on the board, at least I haven't. I have a great concern about the lives that we live and depend upon associated with plastic and the death that plastic is causing to us and our world. And if places like and entities like Wegmans, West Goshen Township, the borough, and others can eliminate the lazy single-use plastic bags from our consumer hands, that's a good thing. It's the single-use plastic bag is part of a lazy consumerism, and it has nothing to do with the profitability of any business, small or large. We see these plastic bags along our street, they get into the streams, animals get to them, and eventually they become micronized and make their way into our ambient environment. We hear about it all the time. Plastics, we can't live without them, but we're going to die because of them. And why we can't have a consensus here, it's worked very well. I was just at Staples. You either take the stuff out, you bring a bag, you take it out without the bag, or they have paper bags there. Danny Wegman and Wegmans has implemented it effectively, and others. I don't see why we can't get that one at least started. That's my diatribe on that. But this resolution, couple little tweaks here, I can support this idea of keeping open and keeping exploring it. That's all I have to say.
Mike, 2 things quickly at that number 4.
Speak into the microphone.
Yes, sure. Is this better? Mike, can you hear? Is that better?
I'm not sure. Can you
Mike?
Turn it up a little bit more. Thank you.
Mike, number 4, we were trying to be very careful not for any of these to sound like a mandate. And of course, any of the suggestions you have would be most welcome. If you look at number 4, we changed the wording to read this different than I saw it in other township resolutions of the same nature. We have in a prudent manner that satisfies the township's fiduciary duties. So it was meant as a qualifier. If you want further qualification, of course, we will do whatever. All right.
Christy, I understand that. I'm just simply saying I can support this, and perhaps at least a majority of the board could support this resolution with just a couple of those tweaks. And may we bring it back at another meeting if there was any interest amongst other board members to say, yeah, with a couple tweaks to soften this with the intent that we're not committing, but we're keeping our eyes and ears open. may we bring it back? And I could support it and I would second the resolution at that point in time.
I think that's great, and I'd recommend at this point, Christie, if you just take the comments of the board at this meeting back to the ESAC and take another run at this resolution, and we'll bring it back up at a.
I
future
think
meeting.
I got all of Mike's points, but anybody, any other additional?
Yeah, thank you, Christine. Actually, I agree with you, Mike. I could be amenable to a lot of this if the wording, I understand like the fiduciary, if that's what satisfies, but a couple of the other things with the wording, I think if it's less mandate per se, and to encourage, to strive, things of that nature is something that I could get on board with. And then I might surprise Mike Lynch here when it comes to plastic bags, but I would be interested in exploring. I'm on, obviously you want to be as, responsible as you can, but then I'm also on the side of mandating businesses to have that or to exclude them from being able to do the plastic bags. So I'm on the fence right now. I'd love if the ESAC decided to pursue something in regards to.
Well, this was the first step.
Okay,
We didn't include that
Got
in
it.
this resolution, but Tridifrin, I'm pretty sure it's Tridifrin, just passed a plastic bag ban on the bags, on the straws, on styrofoam. And then they initiated a 15-cent charge for the paper bags, because paper bags are not great either. People need to bring their own. And everybody who goes to BJ's or Costco, they have to bring their own bags. So
I went into Giant yesterday and I drove my wife's car. I forgot the reusable bags. I'm like walking out of the grocery store like this.
Yes.
So, but yeah,
That's-
Mike, I would be.
that's the
interested in-
second step after this, but we'll soften this in any way that would be palatable. to
I'll
all.
throw you just a couple of these expressions that I.
Please
I
just
put in
email
here.
them to me.
Mike, can I be included on that as well?
That'd be
Oh,
wonderful.
absolutely. I'll
I don't-
I'll put it out to all the, all my colleagues and copy you, Christie, and then we'll see what shape this looks like, maybe at an upcoming meeting and give it another try at that point in time.
I looked at about 10 of them and this was, I tried to soften. I didn't mean anything to
Yeah,
sound like
I
a
don't
mandate.
want to see any hard dates. I don't want to have our residents or our boards pushed. I can't support anything that's going to be a hard push for us. You're already encouraging, you're already doing so many other things. And you're doing so many great things. I don't understand why we need a resolution.
Okay.
Is there a
don't-
reason why
alright.
we need a
I don't-
resolution?
I don't see a push anywhere. I don't see any mandates. I don't see any requirements. I see.
Well, wording is easy to change. So, you just let me know what you want and it's fine. Thank you so much for your consideration.
Thanks,
Christie,
Christie.
thank
Thanks for
you.
your work on it.
Appreciate your work.
All right, standing issues, projects, Hershey's Mill Dam project. How are we doing there, Derek?
We are doing good. We are pretty much done. We just need to,
Final punch list.
yeah, again, as I keep saying, there's a couple of things we need to tidy up in the spring. But other than that, the biggest thing is going to be to get, so in order to close out the grant, you have to have people from the grant agency come down and give the okay. That'll be the biggest thing, and that's probably what'll spur me to take this off the standing issue list. But other than that, we're just in a standstill, mainly because of weather, even though it's been nice.
You'll probably have to go pick them up.
Yeah. I will not get into Milltown.
We did.
Because
We
we
don't
obviously
need
did
to.
that. Hershey's Mill
I
Estates.
also suggest we take Hershey's Mill Dam project off the state
Yeah.
issues.
Okay.
Yeah.
It's done.
Yeah, I would agree.
Good.
So Hershey's Mill Estates sewer line replacement, we are rocking and rolling as we were indicating earlier. They're going faster than expected, which I am hoping leads to a quicker end date for that. But everything's going well so far. Bill lives right there, so maybe he can give some comments on that.
End of March.
So, yeah, I think by the end of March, we'll have all the
99.
sewer line
Right.
stuff done. As far as restoration, that's gonna take a
It's
few
gonna be
months.
close, well, before it grows in, but they
Yeah.
have it fully
Yeah,
strawed.
strawed, yeah.
I too live in the neighborhood and I'll just let you know that Tom Beggs, one of our residents, who's been active on this project, put out a letter to the homeowners association. So to all residents, filling them in on the progress, and he's communicated very nicely with Mark and staff on the process and the issues that we're going to be facing, and, you know, it's a big project and it's a loud and dirty project, but it's got to be done. So, you know, the communication's been improved over the last month with regard to the residents in the Hershey Mill Estates.
I'd also say I was over at the site this past weekend and was pretty impressed with the way it's been staged. There's some major equipment there, big track hose, couple of them at least. You know, we hear these numbers and the cost of these projects, and we say, "You're just replacing a sewer line, what is it?" But you see the logistics. And, you know, I was impressed with the strength, if you will, of the I think it's a 6 or an 8-inch line, the blue-green pipe that's there, just how strong that is. But I was further impressed with understanding from our consulting engineer with the municipal authority, Mike Ellis from Pannoni, and his staff, of how diligent this contractor is. We talked about it briefly about the additional stone added, but these folks are really experienced. They know what they're doing, and bedding this thing in properly is being done. And that speaks well for the integrity of the work and the performance that hopefully this line is going to have for the next 50 or more years. So I'm pretty impressed with what I saw down there, and the care along some of the water course with well-placed erosion sediment control rolls and that sort of thing. So it is a messy project, but I think pretty well done from what I can see.
Thank you, Mike. The only comment I'll make is if we do get finished by the end of March or sometime in April, that's the best time to plant grass and trees and all that sort of thing. So the timing is good.
Yeah.
Thank you. What else do we have, Derek?
We have, any other matter? would
Yeah.
be Next.
Yeah.
And then
Yes, I have a
public comment.
matter. I have a matter. I want to just give a shout out to Jason and his daughter Isla for the really fun cubing tournament that they put together for last Friday. There were about 20 kids that came out with their Rubik's cubes, both the 3x3 and the 2x2 cube. And the kids were amazing. They were fast. And Jason was able to convince an old guy to come down and show his stuff. So Dan came down and was the comic relief between the 3 cube and the 2 cube events. And it took him a minute and a half to get his cube done. Once upon a time, he'd get it done in 12 seconds, but he was impressed because one of the kids actually knew the method that he was using to solve the cube. And the kids were really supportive of one another, even when they couldn't solve the cube. They were really great. But Isla did a terrific job. So she's getting great training for when Jason needs to be replaced.
Rubik's cubes are, you know, there's some lore out there that many years ago, after one of the Beatles, John Lennon finished recording, I forget which tune it was, but at the end of it, you hear him say, "I got blisters on me fingers." And the lore is that it really wasn't from playing the track over and over again. It was that he was playing with a Rubik's cube in the studio, and it so, you know, bludgeoned and blistered his fingers that he had trouble finishing the track. So that's, you can
Believe that was Helter
believe it
Skelter.
or not. It was Helter Skelter, believe it or not.
Do we have anything else? Public comments.
Good evening, Ron McGill from 1050 Hershey Mill Road. I had a question for you guys. Number one, as to the status of the approval of 1010. I thought that was going to be released last night, but have you?
I can't hear you. Can you speak up a little bit?
My question is regarding the status of the subdivision plan for 1010 Hershey Mill Road.
Conditional use.
The conditional use hearing that we had last
Conditional
month.
use decision should be rendered March 7th.
Oh, okay. I was told it was going to be the 20th, but that's great.
No, yeah, March 7th. Bill couldn't make it tonight, so we need our attorney present for that.
Okay, so that's that. As which we'll wait and see how that comes out. I do have some pictures of the flooding of that property also from the last storm we had this year that shows their entire bridge completely wet from the mailbox to 2 trees up the driveway. So I think all of those things that we talked about before regarding stormwater retention on that property, literally 1 gallon coming down that stream is a flood hazard for Hershey Mill Road, even bigger flood hazard for 1034 Hershey Mill, which I also want to bring up because as a segue from that, second topic is the conversation that the Hershey Mill Dam project is done. And I had lots of comments I could throw in there about our dam versus the Milltown Dam that I think you're going to cause the exact same boondoggle that happened across the street from me. But I want to review that if you go back to the drawings and the representations that Gannett Fleming put forth as to the sales pitch of what we would be looking at, it's nothing like what we have. We have a hideous looking galvanized steel walkway that nobody would consider historic in any manner. We have a tragic case of gray stone that came from the bowels of the earth and certainly was never to represent river rock that would have been used.
I don't mean to interrupt. Can we admit that that's water over the dam?
No,
Yeah,
because
we're not
what-
changing, we're not
well,
changing
well,
it, Ron.
I'm
Here-
going to get to
here's-
the point here.
here's the case.
The reason that some of that dynamics was changed, Mr. McGill, was because the Army Corps at some point said that you now have a wetland. And
okay.
we were required to put in, it's not a boondoggle, it's work. I'm tired of your pontification on this, so I
Okay.
don't want to hear really any
All
more
right,
of
all
it.
right, well, hear me out.
Yeah.
So you guys are walking off the job, but I'm here to voice an opinion that is meaningful. So it's evidenced by just looking at those graphic representations that are on the website that we would have this beautiful stream bed with rolling rocks. Well, number one, I would remove all the gray stone that is there to retain the water. And what Mark Miller did with no permit in 1 week to fix the stream bed of 1034 to satisfy your easement was against all the rules. And I'm all for it because you spent 2 million doing a tragic project. And in 1 week, Mark Miller made the stream go straight in a way that everybody thinks 1034 Hershey Mill is fixed. But you look at that ugly gray stone there and nobody, like you wouldn't even approve a commercial building site to put that stone in their detention basin.
Aesthetics or function?
Of course, yes.
Aesthetics, we're not changing it for aesthetics. That's your opinion versus other people's.
So
opinion.
you're
Talking
telling me if I wanted to build a,
about the stones are functionally
Well-
not working, then that's a whole other.
all right, well,
subject.
they're not working because you've caused increased flooding on that property. I've been there for 30 years and never,
They're causing the-
they are because you raised up the dirt to the east of the stream, which caused the stream to flow towards the building. And I brought this up 15 years ago when they said they were going to breach the dam. And this year and last year, since they breached the dam, you have now caused water as deep as 8 inches to be in the courtyard of that driveway.
Are you an engineer?
I am. I studied engineering at Penn State.
Are you an engineer?
Yes.
A certified engineer?
I do not work as an engineer, but I studied engineering.
Um,
I can tell you in 30 years that never was that courtyard wet, not at all,
so.
never.
we-
And now it's a foot deep. So you changed it.
We hear your concerns, and we can have our public works guy talk to our engineer.
Okay, well, okay, so in that light, Gannett Fleming did that design. I stood up here with your predecessors, told them what was going to happen. It's now happened. So whether I'm a paid engineer right now, or I just studied as one, and I've done a ton of projects and I've owned a lot of real estate and I've done these kinds of things, it's tragic. And I believe you're going to do the same thing with Milltown. Frankly, if you took John's idea and sent Mark Miller in there to straighten the stream, remove the dam, you'd spend a couple $100,000 and it would be still wetlands because it's going to be wetlands, not a park. And you'd save the township $5 million for a park that nobody locally probably wants once they see what it's really going to look like. And no one ever uses because no one ever comes to ours. We get a couple people a week come over from Hershey Mill and go, ooh, what did they do? It's a waste of money.
Mr.
So-
McGill, thank you for your comments. My
So-
my request in the future is, we understand you're not happy with the dam. Every time it's brought up in a meeting, you come up and say this basically the same thing. We understand, we respect your opinion, but for future meetings, if you don't mind respecting our time and everyone else's
Okay.
time to ask questions relevant,
All right.
they don't
So-
repeat the same
All right,
frustration.
So going back to let's look above you right now. It says right above you in that sign, respecting the past. Right? We tore out a dam, we ruined a mill property. We're now going to let what is probably the closest thing to a historic district that we have on Hershey Mill Road potentially get developed into high density housing. I mean, we've got,
13 homes behind us.
yeah, so.
Mr. McGill,
know,
as far as that development is concerned, if the zoning permits something, we're not allowed to disallow it.
Okay,
So
I
as long as
understand.
they're within the bounds of the law, then we don't have a choice but to allow it. There are certain parameters that the builder is going to have to follow, as you
Sure.
know.
Yeah.
And that's the best that we can do at this
Okay.
time.
Well, I was told by Dwayne the other day on the phone that they are not considering the 250-foot code for to protect historic properties. And they don't feel that they need to have a historic commission review this, which it's in your code. I gave you the code the last time, that you are not permitted without secondary approval from a historic review board to disturb any earth at all within 250 feet of an historic building.
And you did bring
It's
that to
in
us.
that.
And
So-
you did tell us that
But
before.
Wayne told me it was not going to be considered.
That's not something that I can speak to because
Okay.
we're not really supposed to speak to this matter at all because it is an ongoing
Sure.
legal situation and we're not permitted to speak to it right now. So I'm not going to speak to what Wayne told
okay.
you because I don't know that he told you that. I don't know what is true and what is not true. So I would defer to our solicitor in that regard. And that's why we're telling you regarding that property, we've told you what we can tell you. And
Okay.
we've told you that we're not allowed to disallow something that's
I
permitted.
understand.
And so we have to move on from that subject because it's not something we can discuss tonight.
Okay, so if you abide by what's in the code, then you're going to restrict it within 250 feet.
I'm
It's
telling
very
you that we
simple.
cannot discuss it at this
That's
time.
actually-
That's all.
I'm just reiterating. the fact that
Disagreement
it's in
between
the
you and
code.
our solicitor on that subject. If you look at what you're citing, just look at what you're citing very carefully. That's all
So,
I'll say.
so why would some predecessor to you guys put a language in a code that says 250-foot restriction within a historic building?
You're misinterpreting the restriction.
Why would it be in there? You got to ask a rhetorical question. Why would it be there? Look,
It's not something that's up for debate tonight. It's something that has to go to the solicitor
Yeah.
if there's an issue.
right.
Yeah.
So I suggest you get the solicitor to look back at that so that nobody on this board, and this is I'll end the comment here. If there is additional flooding, this board is liable for an accident on Green Hill Road, right? If you backed up 20 years and read all the notes on why we tore out the Hershey Mill Dam,
Termination and number one.
okay? Well, so
We have attorneys, and number three, that's why we buy insurance. So, and number
Okay.
four, that's why we use engineers, licensed engineers that help us design those things.
All right.
and
Well,
they
it's-
did a bad job. So
But,
I'll leave it at that.
y-
But
Thank you, Ron. Let's not get into an argument here.
I'm not here to argue. I'm just here to reiterate that
I
point. 'cause
appreciate
I
that.
was
And-
told that
and
it was going
My
to be.
apologies that Mike isn't in here. He should be.
That's all right. I'm used to being ignored.
You must be married.
I've been married for 30 years and
There
I've
you go.
been facing this,
There
your
you go.
predecessors over this exact issue for 20. So
Okay.
have a nice.
Other comment? We have somebody on Zoom.
Yeah, Russ.
Russ?
Hey,
Hey,
just have a couple things I'd like to follow up with from the, some previous conversation. Derek, you mentioned that about this Hershey Mill project. Not the Hershey Mill, but the Mill Street, whatever you want to call it, Mill Dam,
Milltown.
that you sent out letters to the locals that were involved. Something with
Mhm.
this magnitude of cost inflicting upon our budget, and considering that this first quarter, not only did we receive a sewer tax increase, but we also got a real estate tax increase. So we had two taxes within a short period of time increase, which I'm not debating. But the thing is, there is a lot of people out there that are concerned. All of a sudden, we got these two taxes in one quarter. So why wouldn't you send this letter out to the whole township so they know that there's a potential that there's going to be another $1 million that's going to hit the budget?
Russ, we've been, the Milltown Dam project letter has had an ongoing Excel sheet list.
Yeah,
based
but you said
on-
you sent it out just to the locals in that area. I'm just
Yeah, but
asking, why wouldn't you
those-
send it out to the whole township?
Because that's the protocol that's been followed since before my time, as far as the notification system for the Milltown Dam project, because the actual specific area it wasn't about the financing, so to speak, but we're informing that area because of the ongoing construction issues that are going to pop up when construction starts. So
Right.
it's relatively, in my opinion, it's a waste of money to send that township wide as far as the construction issues on the Milltown Dam project when you're not having a construction project township wide. And again, I'm using a specific Excel sheet that was already created when I was here for
Yep.
ongoing communication for the Milltown neighbors.
Yeah, but you also
And I
have a
did
time,
expand it somewhat.
and you do have a chance to change things that people bring up. That's fine. Thank you very much for that one. David, my
Well,
question,
I do, but I don't want to make it like I don't disagree with it. I don't think it should be a
Okay.
township wide letter. That's just me.
Right. I understand that. David, you've made some suggestions about the survey that you spelled off about the top 10 things people really want. Where did you get that information from so I could look at that as well?
It was in
Microphone.
Russ, if you just Google that, you'll find lots of articles, but this was a study done by Robert Charles Lesser, Lesser and Company.
Robert Charles Lesser? Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'd just like to go back and look at that. That's all.
There are some other sources that affirm that as well.
Yep, that'll give me a guide to go down different avenues. The lady that was up talking about this, the EVs. I did want to ask her something. Didn't have the opportunity, so I thought I'd do it now. I'm not sure if she's still there, but
She's not.
okay. But the big thing now coming up with these EVs, other than the damage that it's doing to foreign countries and the people that work in there, those child labor laws that are being broken according to our standards. Giant gives out free electric. Wawa is now going to do a program where they're going to start giving out free electric. Target's giving out free electric, which is fine. I understand that. But the problem is these EVs don't pay a single penny in road tax. And I've been after the local rep for the past 3 years and nothing gets done. And they blame it on that there was Republicans didn't want to push that. What can we do as a township to make sure that they're also paying their fair dues like everybody else in our township?
That's a good comment, Russ.
Russ, as an EV owner, I'm gonna tell you,
It's a good
We
comment,
can't.
but it's also not a township comment. It's
No.
something that the state government has to deal with and the federal government at some point.
I think Senator Comita would be very interested to hear from you, Russ, on that.
She
and
was the
probably
first one I
would be-
talked to when she was the rep. Then I talked to her, and now I'm talking to the current one. And all I get is, well, we didn't pass it the last session, so we got to start the ball all over again.
yeah, that's pretty much what happens, Russ. Every time a new batch is cycled in and they have to start from scratch. And there is always some talk about a usage fee by the mile. So it's something that I expect is going to happen to us sooner rather than later. It's something they're implementing in California.
Yeah, and Oregon as well. Oregon had it in for a couple of years now. And that's all I wanted to do. Thank you.
Thank you, Russ.
Thanks.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes.
do we have any other, do we have anything else on this? Sorry,
Nothing
one
else?
second.
I don't see any.
Liaison reports, correspondent, no.
I would like to make the motion to adjourn.
Second.
All right, motion passes unanimously. We are adjourned.
Say without objection, you are.
Oh, I have a safe,
You don't have to vote.
safe ride down there, but you know, if you let me know, I might have.